Hello, all of you wonderful people in Management 386. Today, we're going to continue the conversation we're having about the entrepreneurial process, and we're going to take it a step further and begin to talk more in depth about the target market and/or our customer segments. But before we do that, I'm going to start class the way that I always do by going through the entrepreneurial process and the parts of the model that you've learned so far to help reinforce that. And then we'll see how to add in target market information. Give me 1 second here as I share screen with you, and I'm going to pull up a virtual whiteboard for you. Okay, so hopefully you are seeing the virtual whiteboard. And let's start. Let's talk about the entrepreneurial process. As you know, it begins with you, the person, the entrepreneur, and everything that you know and everything that you don't know. We're going to become unbelievably self-aware. And in that, we are going to develop a really keen sense of our strengths and weaknesses. As we do this, we understand that risk and uncertainty exist. And we know that regardless of what our goal is, we want to mitigate risk and to minimize uncertainty as much as possible. In order to do this, one way that we can minimize uncertainty is by increasing what we know. So we can do this through trying to learn different experiences. But yet another way that we can decrease uncertainty is by forming a very effective, diverse team, such that the members of our team have different strengths and weaknesses than we do. The whole point in all of this is we want our collective bounded rationale within our team to be as large as possible. The larger that it is, the more that we decrease the uncertainty that exists. Sorry, sometimes these virtual whiteboards are not as easy to operate as they look. So we want to decrease our uncertainty even more. Now, putting this into the entrepreneurial context, as we've been doing in class, we know that Timmons tells us there are 4 constructs in entrepreneurship. It is the opportunity that we're going to try to exploit, the team that we've just talked about building, the resources that we have to put together in order to make this happen. And he tells us that this all exists in uncertainty. Now, we've already talked about how do we build the team. And what we started talking about in last class is how do we identify the opportunity. Now, the way that we identify the opportunity is by increasing our entrepreneurial awareness and looking around and making observations. Observations in the market. Because Timmons also tells us that the market is what drives entrepreneurship. You see, businesses exist to solve a problem. It's important that we know who we're solving the problem for, and that's the market. That's why we're going to jump in today and talk about how to really pinpoint who our market is. So we make these observations using our entrepreneurial awareness within the market of potential problems that the market might want to be solved. After we identify these observations, then it's up to us to start to articulate the problem. And in order to articulate the problem, we must practice empathy. This gets us into using the framework from design thinking, which is a human-centric process, and it helps us to better understand how we're moving from seeing an observation in the market to using empathy and then defining the problem. The first stage in design thinking is, sorry about that, empathy. Now, empathy is the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. It is, there's 3 kinds. We talked about cognitive empathy, we talked about emotional empathy, and compassionate empathy. And we know that it's a learned skill and something that you've got to start practicing. So once we start to define the problem, that gets us to the second step in design think. We're going to define the problem, which means we're putting into articulate words what the problem is the market is feeling. We know that businesses exist to solve a problem, not an observation. So once we clearly define the problem, it becomes much easier then to think of multiple ideas that are possible entrepreneurial opportunities that could possibly solve the problem and could possibly be something that the market values. Now, the homework assignment that you got in last class was to form teams. So basically, you're going to be putting into practice everything you've learned from here, being the entrepreneur, to forming a team. You're going to remember we're trying to decrease uncertainty. So hopefully you formed a really good team. You're going to use your entrepreneurial awareness to make observations in the market of possible problems. And then you're going to use empathy to define the problem you feel like the market is experiencing. And this is, what is the market feeling that they don't want to feel anymore? Or what does the market want to feel that they're not feeling? Empathy, define, and then you're going to come up with several ideas that are possible entrepreneurial opportunities. So this is where we are so far in class. Today, I want you to remember that where we're trying to get to is to finish all of the due diligence associated with completing this business canvas. And once we come up with the idea that we want to do the due diligence on, we're going to write this up here at the top. What's our possible opportunity? And after we do that, then it's time to start filling in the business canvas. We have finally made it to this little framework. We finally made it there. And the first square that we're going to fill in here are customer segments. Now, customer segments and target market are the same thing. I will use those words interchangeably, so know that I'm speaking about the same thing. In the beginning, it's easy to hypothesize who we think our customer segment is going to be based upon the observation that led us down this path and journey to identifying the opportunity that we're trying to do some homework about. So in the beginning, these customer segments will probably begin with the observation that we made, and that's cool. It should. The thing that you need to understand most when you start to identify your target market and customer segments is that it's probably going to change over time as you complete your due diligence. So don't get married to the initial customer segment that you identify. Understand that the first one is just a starting place. It's just a starting place. And then we're going to go out and do some customer validation in a bit. And we're going to figure out, is this truly our only customer segment, or is it our best customer segment? It could be that there's some other people out there who might spend more money on our opportunity, who value our solution more. But we're going to figure out how to do that. I want to teach you today, though, how to truly articulate who your target customers are. And the one thing that I'm going to tell you is you have to be specific. Extremely specific. And every time that you tell me who you think your customer segments are, I'm going to ask you this magic question. Which ones of those? So if you tell me your customer segment are college students, I'm going to say, okay, which ones of those? You're going to think for just a minute. You're going to say, the ones from out of state. I'm going to say, okay, which ones of those? And perhaps you say, the ones that don't have a car. Okay, which ones of those? And then we have to get to, well, the ones with disposable income, the ones we have to keep narrowing down who exactly our target customer is. And we're going to narrow it down to a very small, specific group. Now, this can give entrepreneurs a little bit of heartburn when they start thinking about narrowing down their customer segments to such a narrow focus, because you feel like you're leaving customers out. This is just not the case. So I want you to fight that fear and that instinct to not really push people out of your target market definition. There's a lot of reasons we want to get super specific. The first reason is we want to be able to really use our resources effectively. Remember, we talked about that lean startup. So we're only using adequate resources. Because we don't have very many resources, we need to know how to use them best. So we've got to get really specific with our marketing. And if we know who our target customers are, then we can really be efficient and effective with our marketing dollars. The next thing that you're going to figure out is that you can't be all things to all people. There's no such thing as a business that caters to everyone. And you can't say, well, just everybody's my customer. No, they're not. Now, will you have some, various times when someone who doesn't fit the mold of your target customer walks into your store or buys your product? Yes, you will, but that's residual customers, not what we're focused on. So you've got to be unbelievably specific. So we're going to keep narrowing things down. Ways that we can narrow down and talk about our specific customers are we can talk, first of all, about demographic information. And when I say demographic information, we're talking about things that matter when we purchase products. Gender matters. Race can matter. Education level can matter. Definitely income level will matter. Where do they live? That matters. Who lives in their household? Who lives with them? That matters. Are they married or not? Do they have children? All of these are very important things that you must know about your target customer. So as you're doing the homework assignment, I want you to be thinking in your mind, who would be my target customer? And I want you to start practicing narrowing them down. As you look into chapter 6 that talks about choosing your target market, you'll understand that there are two possible ways that we can have target customers. One is business to business. Perhaps you're going to have something that you sell to other businesses. You still have to get specific here as to who are the businesses that would buy from you. You still have to be very, very specific. The other way that we can approach the market is what we call business to consumer. Most of you, I think, by listening to some of your ideas, will probably be business to consumer, but either way, it doesn't matter. You still have to be very specific about who your target market is going to be. Now, it gives you some hints in chapter 6 as to how you can practice your niche and how you can narrow this down. So be sure you go look at it. And it also introduces to you the fact that you can write a mission statement. Now, I want you to go look at the mission statement, familiarize yourself with it. We will talk more about that in next class, because in next class, we're also going to learn about how to write a value proposition. And these are two very different statements, but we can't learn about how to write the mission statement or the value proposition until we know how to truly identify who our target market is. Now, this is all really that I wanted to talk to you today about when we're talking about the target market. I just want you to know that it has to be very specific. You can't be all things to all people. And the more specific that you can get when identifying your target market, the more effective you're going to be in your business. And as we go through the rest of the semester, this is all going to make more sense to you. And you're going to say, oh, like once we get to channels, oh, I see why I need to be very specific. Once we start talking about what type of customer relationships that we need to establish, then you're going to say, oh, I get it. I get it. But right now, just start practicing. Who is your target market and how specific can you get in identifying them? And every time you think you've got it nailed down, just remember to ask yourself, which ones of those? I'm going to stop screen sharing with you now and remind you all that you have a homework assignment, team assignment, that is due on Tuesday before your class begins. And then next week, you're going to get another individual assignment. So be sure that you're caught up with all of your reading, be sure that you're caught up with your teams, and be sure that you have that homework assignment done and done well for next week. I look forward to seeing you in class again. If you have any questions, as always, please just email me.